The gavel cracked like a whip in the stale air of the courtroom, echoing off the polished wooden panels that had witnessed countless broken dreams. In the defendant's chair sat Jamal Ellis, a lanky 17-year-old black kid from the cracked sidewalks of Southside Chicago, his oversized hoodie swallowing his frame like a shroud. His dark eyes, sharp as shattered glass, scanned the room, not with fear, but with a quiet calculation that no one noticed. Not yet. The Judge Harlan Whitaker, a silver-haired pillar of the establishment with a face etched by decades of unchallenged authority, leaned forward, his lips curling into a sneer that dripped with disdain. To him, Jamal was just another statistic, another young black face in the docket, accused of assault and theft in a botched corner store robbery that reeked of overreach from the start. The prosecutor, a slick-suited shark with a tie too tight for his ego, laid out the case like a predator toying with prey. Grainy security footage twisted to fit the narrative, witness statements cherry-picked to ignore the chaos of the night. Jamal's public defender, buried under a caseload heavier than her conscience, fidgeted with papers, her whispers lost in the hum of fluorescent lights. But as Judge Whitaker's voice boomed, laced with that familiar undercurrent of racial contempt, the kind that whispered, "You don't belong here," without ever saying it aloud, something shifted in the air. Jamal straightened, his fingers unclenching from the table's edge. He wasn't trembling. He was ready. What the court saw as defiance, the world would soon remember as destiny. In that frozen moment, as the judge's mockery hung like smoke, no one could have guessed the firestorm about to ignite. A boy forged in the fires of forgotten injustices, armed not with fists but with the unyielding blade of knowledge, was about to carve his name into the annals of a system built to break him. And when the dust settled, the shock would ripple far beyond those walls, exposing the rot at the heart of justice itself. Would one voice be enough to shatter the silence? Jamal Ellis had never been the kid who blended into the background of his neighborhood's relentless grind. Born in the shadow of towering projects where the wind carried the scent of desperation and distant gunshots, he grew up navigating a world that viewed his black skin as a perpetual suspect. His mother, Lena, a night shift nurse whose hands were calloused from holding both strangers' lives and her son's dreams, had instilled in him a fierce resilience. "The system's a maze, baby," she'd say over lukewarm oatmeal in their cramped kitchen, her eyes weary but unbowed. "But mazes have walls you can climb." From her, Jamal learned the unspoken rules. Keep your head down in school, but never let them dim your light. School was his quiet rebellion, a magnet program for gifted youth in a district starved of resources, where textbooks were outdated relics and teachers juggled classes like overfilled plates. Yet Jamal thrived, devouring law books borrowed from the public library, his bedroom a fortress of highlighted statutes and dog-eared Supreme Court rulings. It started innocently enough with stories from his Uncle Ray, a former public defender ground down by the machine until it spat him out broken. Uncle Ray's tales of rigged juries and biased benches lit a spark in Jamal, turning abstract injustices into personal vendettas. By 14, he was staging mock trials in the community center, arguing cases against invisible opponents while the other teens scrolled feeds on cracked phones. He knew the stats by heart. Black boys like him were 5 times more likely to be incarcerated, funneled into adult courts before they could even vote. It wasn't paranoia. It was pattern recognition, the kind that saved lives on streets where a wrong glance could end in cuffs. The incident that landed him here unfolded on a rain-slicked autumn evening, the kind where halos blurred streetlights into halos of false hope. Jamal, heading home from a late study session, cut through the corner store for a soda, his one indulgence after acing another debate tournament. The clerk, a nervous immigrant with eyes darting like trapped birds, misread Jamal's hurried movements as threat. A shove, a spill, and suddenly sirens wailed, turning a misunderstanding into a felony tableau. The police report painted him as aggressor, ignoring the clerk's initial statement that fizzled under pressure. Evidence? A blurry video clip, timestamps manipulated in the rush to close the books. Jamal's heart had pounded not from guilt, but from the cold certainty of the trap snapping shut. Assigned a defender who mistook his silence for stupidity, he chose to represent himself. Pro se, a gamble that raised eyebrows and sealed his fate in the eyes of the bench. Judge Whitaker, whose record whispered of harsher sentences for defendants of color, saw only a hoodlum disrupting his orderly world. As the trial date loomed, Jamal pored over precedents in the county law library, his mind a whirlwind of strategies. He wasn't just fighting for acquittal. He was auditing the soul of a nation that preached equality while practicing exclusion. Little did the court know, beneath the baggy clothes and unassuming gaze, brewed a mind sharper than any barrister's brief, a genius disguised as prey, waiting for the moment to pounce. The air in the courtroom turned electric, charged with the static of impending rupture, as Jamal delivered his final motion with the precision of a surgeon wielding a scalpel forged in fire. Judge Whitaker's face, once a mask of smug certainty, now cracked with fissures of unease, his gavel hovering like a guillotine delayed. The gallery leaned forward, breaths held in collective suspense while the jury's eyes darted between the boy and the bench, their doubt a palpable fog. Jamal's words, narrated in the unyielding rhythm of truth, unraveled the prosecution's tapestry thread by thread. The tampered footage exposed as digital fraud, cross-referenced against FCC logs he'd unearthed in a midnight vigil at the clerk's office. The witness coercion laid bare through contradictory affidavits, echoing the playbook of cases from the Deep South's Jim Crow echoes. His voice rose not in anger, but in indictment, weaving personal peril with systemic sin, the disproportionate shackling of black wrists, the presumption of guilt etched into every mugshot. The prosecutor sputtered, objections flying like desperate arrows. But Jamal parried with precedents that danced from his lips like scripture. Batson versus Kentucky, barring peremptory strikes on race, bolstered by stats on sentencing disparities that hit like thunderclaps. Judge Whitaker pounded the bench, his authority fracturing under the assault, the racial venom in his interjections now naked, a slip of the tongue invoking urban decay as shorthand for the boy's very existence. In that maelstrom, Jamal's mother watched from the back row, her tears silent rivers carving canyons in her resolve, pride warring with terror. The climax peaked as the judge, cornered by the mounting evidence, called for recess, his chambers a bunker against the siege. Hours stretched into eternity, the building's clock ticking like a bomb. When court reconvened, Whitaker's verdict hung in the balance, the room a pressure cooker of unspoken reckonings. With a voice strained by the unaccustomed taste of humility, he dismissed the charges, the gavel's fall a hollow echo of surrender. Shock rippled outward, the prosecutor's pallor ghostly, the jury's nods a quiet vindication. Jamal stood unmoved, his victory not jubilation but a somber milestone, the disguise of the underestimated genius shed in a blaze that illuminated the courtroom's shadows. In the aftermath, as the courtroom emptied like a receding tide, leaving behind the flotsam of overturned files and stunned faces, Jamal Ellis stepped into a world forever altered yet achingly familiar. The dismissal was more than acquittal. It was a fissure in the fortress of bias, a beacon for the shadowed corridors where justice bent under the weight of prejudice. News vans clustered outside the courthouse steps, their lights piercing the dusk like accusatory fingers. Reporters hungry for the narrative of the prodigy who toppled titans. Jamal's face, young and unlined by triumph's vanity, filled screens across the city, Chicago's Southside erupting in cautious cheers, block parties flickering with barbecues and bass-heavy anthems, mothers hugging sons a little tighter that night. Lena pulled him close in the parking lot, her embrace a dam breaking after years of vigilant holding, whispers of, "I knew, baby. I always knew," lost to the wind. But resolution wasn't confetti and headlines. It was the quiet reconstruction, the piecing together of a life derailed but not destroyed. Jamal returned to school not as pariah, but prophet. Classmates who once averted eyes now sought his counsel, debates in the cafeteria turning to dissections of due process, his story a curriculum in itself. University scouts circled, scholarships blooming like unexpected spring. But he chose community college first, grounding his ascent in the soil that birthed him. Uncle Ray, resurrected from his haze of bitterness, Mentored from the sidelines, their evenings filled with case reviews over takeout, plotting a path to the bar exam by 21. Judge Whitaker's fall came swift, a ethics probe sparked by the trial's anomalies. His retirement a euphemism for reckoning. Whispers of similar shadows in his docket fueling calls for reform. The broader impact cascaded. Jamal's testimony before a city council panel, his narrative voice steady as he outlined pipelines of profiling, from school suspensions to street stops, igniting a task force on juvenile justice equity. Protests swelled, not with Molotovs but with marshaled facts, youth organizers channeling his win into voter drives, the Southside's pulse quickening with purpose. Yet scars lingered. Jamal woke some nights to phantom cuffs, the echo of mockery a ghost in his dreams. He channeled it into writing, a blog that amassed followers, essays blending personal saga with policy critiques, exposing how algorithms and sentencing software baked in bias, how public defenders were underfunded war horses in uneven battles. His mother watched him bloom, her shifts easing as pride swelled her chest, though worry never fully ebbed. The world still eyed black excellence with suspicion. Years folded forward. At 22, Jamal passed the bar in a ceremony that packed the hall, his oath a vow not just to law, but to its soul. He opened a clinic in the projects, pro bono hours stacking like armor, taking cases the system shunned. Wrongful convictions, elder evictions laced with redlining ghosts. Clients came in droves, their stories mirrors of his own. A teen girl funneled into the system for truancy born of trauma. An elder man evicted under eminent domain's racial thumb. Each victory chipped at the edifice, his reputation a shield for the vulnerable. Nationally, ripples turned to waves. Congressional hearings citing his model, curricula incorporating his trial as case study in civic education. But Jamal knew the work eternal. Statistics shifted incrementally, incarceration rates for black youth dipping in pockets, but the root rot persisted. In quiet moments, atop his office rooftop overlooking the city lights, he pondered the cost, the innocence forfeited in hidden courtrooms, the geniuses crushed before disguise could drop. His impact wasn't erasure of racism, but erosion, a persistent tide wearing down cliffs of inequity. Friends married, lives branched into normalcy, but Jamal's path veered toward advocacy, testifying in D.C. on bills for body cams and bias training, his voice a bridge between street and state. Lena's health faltered eventually, her final days a bedside vigil of stories swapped, her passing a hollow in his chest filled by legacy. At her funeral, rain-mirroring tears, he vowed amplification, for every Jamal unseen, every Lena unheard. The story closed not with fanfare, but reflection. A man in his 30s, suit-tailored but soul untamed, arguing before the Supreme Court on a landmark case echoing his youth. As the justices leaned in, the boy from Southside stood tall, his genius no disguise but daylight truth. What if every mocked face hid a revolution? In a nation still wrestling its shadows, Jamal Ellis proved one spark could illuminate the dark. Share if this stirred something, because justice isn't given. It's seized, one unmocked voice at a time,